Hey guys, Nick here, and welcome to my Supergirl episode review. My thoughts on last night's episode of Supergirl, which is the season 2 finale titled "Nevertheless, She Persisted," and it was a good episode. There were a lot of things that I liked in it, and then there's a decent amount of things that I did not like. And I'll get into those. But overall, I mean, this season, I think it started out really good, but it was really uneven for me, if I'm gonna be honest. And it sucks because, like, first season, while it had its problems, I really enjoyed it. But this season, there are certain things that I really just didn't like. Obviously, Mon-El being the big thing that I didn't like. Because when you have a character who was a slave owner and everyone wants him to be the love interest, and Kara's dating a former slave owner, so I don't... That's just bad writing and bad television right there. And of course, you're propping up a previous slave owner, and you're throwing away the African-American character, which I think is super, super racist. That aside, you know, just the uneven pacing of the season, sidelining of storylines, especially with James's storyline. And then this episode, we didn't see him as Guardian once! We barely saw him at all in this episode, and it's the finale, and you should have him be a part of it in some capacity, especially now that he's Guardian. Yeah, he was in last week's episode, but he was barely in it. And that was just really frustrating for me as a fan to watch. And I know there's a lot going on in this episode between Superman coming back, between Miss Martian coming back, between all the stuff going on with Kara versus Rhea and Liliana and Lena and all this stuff. And I know it's hard to balance all that stuff, but you could have had James as Guardian in one scene, or have him be somewhat useful instead of just throwing him to the side and having him barely speak at all throughout the entire episode. It was just really frustrating. And this season, I feel like the writers just have proven they don't know how to write James. And I think James, he deserves a better show, to be honest. And I didn't think I was going to say this, but obviously you guys know my feelings on Tyler Hoechlin as Superman. I haven't enjoyed his portrayal. This episode was better. And there's certain aspects of the character that I enjoyed more. I didn't like the whole mind control fight thing with the silver kryptonite. I didn't really care for that, to be honest. And one thing I want to bring up too before I forget, the choreography in this episode was awful. It was really, really bad. Like, the fights between Superman and Kara and, like, Rhea and Kara, they would look so sloppy. And Kara, who's supposed to have all this training from the DEO, her punches are like, oh, like, why are you gonna throw such open punches? The close punches, you keep a stance, and you whether you have super strength or not, that's a horrible form. Like, I'm not like a fighter or anything, and I know throwing wide open punches like that is stupid because you're leaving yourself vulnerable to an attack. And Kara, like, the fight choreography was just awful. And you have all these shows run essentially by the same people, so it can't be that hard to go to like the Arrow team and be like, hey, we need some help choreographing a fight. Can you help us out? Sure, because they're on the same damn sets pretty much, but yet they gave us a really awful fight, to be honest. A couple different times. I mean, the Superman and Supergirl fight wasn't awful, but the choreography for the Rhea fight was just god-awful. The worst fight I've ever seen in the show. And I feel sorry if it seems like I'm being really negative on the episode. It's just the season as a whole honestly wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, you know? Especially with the move to the CW. But even though I knew certain things weren't going to be as good, I mean, when you had, like, the character of Lucy Lane completely gone and hasn't been brought up since. Maxwell Lord gone and hasn't been brought up since, except for like one episode. They talked about Lord Industries or whatever his company was. Cat Grant being gone, you know, it's just, and having her come back. So with her being back in this episode, kind of like taking back over Catco, is Calista Flockhart going to be gone again, or is she going to stay? Who knows? Because I know obviously Calista Flockhart lives in LA, so she can't exactly be in Vancouver for the entirety of the shoot. And I get that because she wants to be with her family and her husband Harrison Ford. You know, he's busy doing stuff as well. I don't know what they're gonna do with Calista Flockhart's character. I mean I loved her coming back. I wish she didn't leave or didn't like. I wish the circumstances weren't there for her to have to leave in the first place. But I wish that she was able to stick around on the show. And I don't know if she is or not because they never said explicitly whether she was coming back full time or not because of the way the episode ended. And speaking of the ending of the episode, obviously this episode ends very similarly to how last year's episode or last year's finale ends with another Kryptonian ship being launched, and it's some looks like some secret Kryptonian sect or something like that, and they send off what they think is going to take over Earth or something like that. And a lot of fans have been theorizing that that's Doomsday, you know. But in all honesty, I don't want to see a Doomsday storyline on the show. I know they're not going to handle it well. And as someone who watched all of Smallville, the Doomsday season was Smallville's weakest season as a whole season. Sam Witwer, who portrayed, Davis Bloom, I think was the other side of Doomsday's name. He was fine. He did good for as good of a role. He did as good of a job as he could in that role. And the look of Doomsday wasn't awful. I mean, you had to do what you got to do on a TV budget, especially on Smallville, when I think Smallville had a lower budget than all these other CW shows that are currently on. In terms of quality, the Doomsday storylines didn't work on TV. I think Doomsday honestly should be left alone for a while, because we had two different interpretations of the Doomsday character in Smallville and most recently in Batman vs Superman. So I just think if it is gonna be Doomsday, I'm not gonna be too excited about it, because first of all, it's like I don't know why they would do that. I could be completely wrong. It could be a completely different character. I've seen some stuff online about it potentially being like a female character that Kara has fought in the past, and I think in some female villain that Kara fought in the New 52 run of her comic book. I wouldn't mind that, as long as they handle it well, because I feel like this season, I feel like there wasn't really a focus on the villain. I think that's also why I didn't enjoy it as much. Like, in first season as well, you had a great villain instead of being set up in Astra, and then they throw her aside for Non and Indigo, who weren't even that great of villains. And I liked Laura Vandervoort, and the actor who played Non was fine, but they just weren't compelling villains, and it sucked, because I was enjoying the show for the most part. But I don't know, those things aside, I didn't enjoy that season. This season, I really feel like I'm being negative on it, but there was really a lot in this episode that I enjoyed. Obviously, the return of Miss Martian. I really have enjoyed seeing her on the show this year. I wish they didn't, send her off to Mars, because it's like when you have for a show that's supposed to be so pro women and pro feminism and all this stuff, and you throw a character aside who is a woman of color and one of the coolest female DC characters who hasn't had the biggest chance to shine except for Young Justice. I wish they didn't do that to her. And seeing her back, and I hope she stays on for a decent amount of time, because it'd be cool to have her and Kara going out together. Or I'm not big on her and John having a relationship, because in the comics it's kind of like an aunt and niece kind of thing. That made it kind of weird that when they kissed in the episode. But obviously in this continuity, it is different, and they're not saying that it's a niece and nephew, and they're never blood related to begin with. But it is kind of weird for me watching that, because like knowing in Young Justice that it is more like a familial relationship. But that aside, I really enjoyed Miss Martian coming back. I did enjoy the return of Superman to an extent, and I like him talking about Lois. I kind of like Lois is the reason he fights, and when he's out there, he thinks about saving Lois. But one thing I want to bring up that is kind of unfair is when Clark is talking about how he wouldn't know what to do if it was Lois of the world. That he'd always think that he would always want to imagine that there's another way. That mentality, which I believe was carried over from Smallville and some of the comics in general. But one thing I like about the DCEU is that choices like that aren't easy. It's not just a black and white, like, I can save Lois and I can defeat this guy without killing him. Like, a very clear example of that is Man of Steel. I know Man of Steel is a very controversial movie, and for a lot of Superman fans, that was a really bad interpretation of Superman. I feel the opposite. I love the DCEU sans Suicide Squad, but the new interpretation of Superman that we've gotten in Henry Cavill's performance, I've loved it. And what they did in Man of Steel was show us that for a guy like Superman, who at that point had barely put on the suit like the day before, it's decisions like that, when you snap Zod's neck, aren't easy, And as much as we want to think, there's always going to be another way, sometimes it's just you have to make a decision. You can't just prop one life over the life of another. You have to make a decision, and you have to live with those decisions. And with Man of Steel, you see that Clark has to live with that decision of killing Zod. And I like how that somewhat played into Batman vs Superman. They don't directly mention it, but you can see, like, like his actions have a weight on him, and it's just because of the way the world looks at Superman in the DCEU. Like it makes for to me, it makes for good storytelling and interesting storytelling, and it's different from what we've seen like in Smallville or Supergirl or whatever. But I just want a storyline and Superman or Supergirl that where they have to make tough decisions, and everything's not going to be a clear-cut yes or no or black or white decision. That I want there to be emotional weight to whatever decision they make. That it's not going to be like, oh, they can save the day and all these things everything's fine now. But one thing I did like about the finale, and this is going back into Mon-El, is that they were able to get rid of the Daxams or the Daxamites with the device that Leon Luthor brought to Lena and that Wen and all of them were working on, that created like a lead atmosphere so that Daxamites couldn't survive, and that's why they for the time being got rid of Mon-El, and it looks like he ended up in the Phantom Zone, which I was theorizing for a while now. And again, my feelings on Mon-El aside, I think him being in the Phantom Zone, I think was something that happened in the comics, because no matter what, I think Mon-El has to somehow get to the Legion of Superheroes in the future, because that's where the storylines are really from, and that's where, as a character, where he was the most interesting, because he was kind of like the Superman of the Legion, even though he's not a Kryptonian, he is like, and he was almost like hand chosen by Superman to kind of not lead them, but kind of be his like protege of the future. And I did enjoy that aspect of the comics, but in this version of the character, I haven't loved the character because of what they do. In fact, he's a former slave owner, and his romance with Kara, which I just haven't been a fan of. I just didn't really enjoy that part of the performance. And his performance honestly wasn't even all that great. Because you introduced a character on Mon-El, and he did almost nothing heroic or superhero-y, really. He never even had a suit. Like, all he was a romantic interest for Kara, and he was an asshole. And you can say, oh, he had character development in the end. Yeah, but didn't make him interesting at all. Like, in this episode, he was still just boring to me. He wasn't Mon-El. And when Superman came in, he was like, oh, she must have seen something in you, and if you loved her. And, like, the fact that, like, and one thing that really bugged me was when, at the end, when Kara's talking to Kat about, her not being with Mon-El anymore, and she's like, this is the first time you ever really liked someone. Excuse me, this time last year, you were all over James. What was that? You just throwing that aside? It's just, it's stuff like that that makes this show so frustrating for me, because they purposely push James to the side to prop up this boring-ass white guy. And coming from a straight white guy, I'm tired of seeing that crap. Like, nothing for me, like, the Marvel movies, like, they're just more or less the same. It's like white bread. I mean, yeah, it's fine, it tastes okay, but you're more or less getting the same thing, like, each time you have it. And that's what I feel like the Marvel movies are, whereas the DCEU, love it or hate it, it is more diverse, and they are telling different stories, and they are taking certain risks with certain storylines and characters that you wouldn't necessarily do, that Marvel wouldn't necessarily do. Like, what they did in Batman vs. Superman, Marvel probably would have never have done. And I applaud DC for doing that. Whether people love it or hate it, I personally loved it because you're taking risks with these characters, and you're allowing the audience to think more about these heroes in a different light, not just like, oh, he can save the day, that there's more to these characters than that. And that's why this show just overall hasn't been the best, and I know a lot of people have kind of jumped ship from this show anyway, which is why I like my views on these reviews have gone down so much since last year. But overall, I mean, this episode wasn't a bad episode. It was good. It had a lot of good moments, with kind of in the way it ended with Alex and Maggie, and I've liked their relationship so far this season. I wish it could have been handled a little bit better, because there's sometimes it just felt like a little much, or wasn't focused on enough. I just think the show needs a new set of writers, or different set of writers, or a new vision, at least for the show, to make it at least somewhat different and feel like the stories actually matter, and that there's more to it than just, there's more to the show than what they've shown us in the past. And I just want a really good and compelling show. Like, how I felt about the first season of the show, where I really enjoyed it, except for the villain storyline. Like, this season, I was so back and forth the entire season that I was just like, oh, come on, man. Like, again, there's a lot of episodes that I really enjoyed as singular episodes, much like my feelings on Supergirl this year are kind of like my feelings on The Flash, where the season has been kind of a letdown, but there have been good singular episodes that I have enjoyed, or most of the season I've enjoyed, but as a whole season, it has a lot of problems. And with tonight, obviously I'm shooting this Tuesday morning, so tonight's going to be the finale of The Flash, so I'm hoping The Flash ends well. And also, I think with that being said, that's going to be it for me. Again, this season of Supergirl wasn't what I expected it to be. Yeah, it was kind of cool having Superman in there. He was fine in the finale. I didn't like him much at first because there's too much of the Reeve Superman, and I'm really tired of storytellers going back to that version of Superman because we're in 2017. But this isn't the 70s and the 80s anymore. You can do a somewhat new and different interpretation of Superman, and a lot of people like just go back to that one. But he was fine in this episode. He was again, he was okay. Tyler Hoechlin in this episode, I liked him more than in his first couple of episodes. I really love the John Jones storyline this season and Miss Martian. Obviously didn't care for Mon-El really. Wynn I thought was a really good character this season. Obviously I love James this season. I just wish the writers actually gave more of a focus on James this year instead of throwing him to the side. Because it's really frustrating as a fan of James. And Kara this year kind of bugged me. I was saying like my favorite characters in the season were James, Jean, and Lena. Lena was a great character this season. I'm glad she ended up not being a villain this season. And I hope they bring her on as a regular next season because I think she's a great character. Katie McGrath did a really good job this year. I wish she had more of a role to play in the finale, but overall, I really enjoyed it. And I want the show, in terms of moving forward in the show, I just want better writing and better action, and that's really all I need. Because the acting, it's a CW. I know acting isn't always going to be the best, but I just want the show to at least be pretty good, Like, kind of like how, like the first season was, except with more of a focus on a good villain as well. Because I really didn't care for Terry Hatcher's performance in the end. I really didn't. And the whole invasion thing I just really didn't care for as much as I probably should have as a fan of the show. But with that aside, I did enjoy a lot of the season. But as this whole season storyline, I thought it was really flawed. I am looking forward to the next season, though. I'm not really sure what they're going to do with this whole new Kryptonian storyline or what this new thing's going to bring. Who knows? We'll find out as we get closer to the premiere in the fall. So again, with that being said, that's going to be it for me. So what did you guys think of Supergirl Season 2 or the finale? Send your thoughts in the comment section below. Give this video a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button for all the other content on my channel. As I said earlier, obviously tonight's episode of The Flash is going to be the finale, so I will be doing a review tonight for that instead of tomorrow morning. I apologize for these videos coming out later than usual because this week, as I've said in the past, I got a new job. So this week I'm closing every night, so I'm not able to watch the shows live or early at all. So I'm having to watch them like after. So you guys can expect a review sometime around like 11:30 tonight of The Flash, and maybe the same thing with Arrow, or maybe Thursday morning for Arrow for that finale. But overall, again, it was an okay season of the show, and I'm glad I was able to share my thoughts on the show with you guys this year. And I hope you guys stick around and watch my videos back when I come back on the show at the fall. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, have a good one.